It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Trajan Wealth brings you this portion of the program. All your trusted local needs in retirement with a local fiduciary. All you have to do is give them a call, 801-899-7600, or visit their website, TrajanWealth.com. Chris Boyle covers UCF for Daytona Beach News, for the Daytona Beach News Journal. He's joining us right now on the program. Chris, thanks for being with us, man.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Are you coming out to Provo for this matchup between UCF and BYU?
I will be, and I just trained my body for the cold by going to see some ice sculptures here out by Disney World. So I'm hoping that braces me for anything.
I don't know if it will brace you for anything, but it is. I will say it's a little bit more mild than it could be. I have sat through some awful games in November at LaVell Edwards Stadium and at Rice-Eccles Stadium that are in like sub. We're talking about in the teens with the wind chill, and it's not going to be nearly that bad, but it is going to be kind of cold. But it will be a nice setting for UCF to come out to Provo. These are two teams who have definitely had different seasons. What's Scott Frost 2.0 been like for UCF? I'm imagining last year the Gus Malzahn era ended so weird. At the very least, this is a much better situation for this UCF program going into their final game this year.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Frost 2.0 has been interesting. I don't think it's been quite exactly what UCF fans have expected in terms of the pace of play and the explosiveness that they were accustomed to in 2017 when he was last here. But I think that's also kind of down to the personnel and also a cognizance of not burning out the defense. And the defense has been the stronger unit all year. I actually think Alex Grinch, who took a lot of flack when he got hired as the defensive coordinator, has done a pretty good job with this unit at all three levels, particularly on the back end and coverage. They've been a pretty rock-solid group the whole season. But, yeah, it's been a different style of team. It's been inefficient at times. It's been fun to watch at times, certainly in the West Virginia and North Carolina games, I think when optimism was a little bit higher. But they've really, really struggled on the road. It's been downright ugly at times. They lost 30-3 at Baylor, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They lost 48-9 to Texas Tech just 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So they're averaging only 10.8 points per game, and they're 4 games away from home. They've lost 8 in a row on the road overall. And, given how good of a team BYU is traditionally at home with an over 75% win rate at LaVell Edwards Stadium historically, I think this is going to be a really, really tall task, especially with how much they're playing for and knowing that not only a spot in the Big 12 title game is on the line, but I talked to Mitch Harper just a couple of days ago. I said this is a game they may need to win with some style points, not necessarily to rub it in, but to give the casual voters that may be tuning in at 1 o'clock on a 1 o'clock Eastern as opposed to 10 p.m. Eastern, when sometimes you get that East Coast bias, I guess you can get from the voters. You got a chance to maybe open up a few eyes and show what you can do.
So what has been the problem? We talk about UCF and kind of the games that they've played, and Alex Grinch doing a great job thus far with what he's been able to work with. I did see the Cincinnati game, and there is some talent on his roster, but what has been the issue of not being able to put it together, or what is it? What are they so close on?
I think pre-snap penalties has been a huge issue all year. They've got like close to 30 pre-snap penalties across the season. And that's been particularly evident on the road. I remember in a mid-October game against Cincinnati, they just continued to shoot themselves in the foot. Any sort of positive momentum they had in that game, because they drove the ball and they had the ball for over 40 minutes in that game. They ran 90 offensive plays and scored 11 points that day.
Right.
So they had opportunities to go out there and make things happen, but it felt like every time they started to put together 1-2 positive plays, they would go right back the other direction and give away 10, 15, 20 yards worth of penalties. So that's certainly one thing. Inexperience, especially on offense. I mean, you look at the roster, Taven Jackson, this is his first year as a full-time starter. He started one game for Indiana last year and a handful the year before that. Miles Montgomery, their starting running back, it's the first time he's really been trusted as a full-time starter. A lot of their top receivers, Wade and Charles, who had a career-high 6 receptions last year, is a true freshman. Dwayne Thomas was more of a part-time player at Charlotte. He's one of their top receivers this year. Dylan Wade, who had a monster game last week against Oklahoma State, was kind of a complimentary piece at Maryland. Now he's kind of been the go-to target for them. So a lot of inexperience. The offensive line has had its issues as well, getting pushed in the run game. So it's kind of compounded. All those things at once have really kind of stunted them from showing up every weekend and finishing drives and being able to put points on the board.
When you see this BYU team and what they've done this year, it's been, I think, exceeding expectations for what fans thought was going to happen after Jake Retzlaff left the program after he transferred out. And obviously adding, freshman Bear Bachmeier in the time frame that they did, post-spring, and then having a quarterback battle, and then the true freshman wins a quarterback battle. There were a lot of head-scratching moments for fans who were like, what are they supposed to expect this year? What have you watched with this BYU team that you've been impressed by with what the freshman's been able to do and what this team's been able to do now on the verge of 11 wins in the regular season?
Yeah, I think Bachmeier's done a good job of avoiding mistakes and running the football with physicality. I always think that BYU is just a really physical, obviously mature team. They are typically an older team than most of the league, in a given year. But I also think that they brought back so many playmakers on both sides of the ball that it really helped smooth that transition. Chase Roberts, I remember, caught a touchdown and was a real problem as a deep threat against UCF last year. LJ Martin had over 100 yards rushing against UCF last year in Orlando, and he's coming off of his best game against Cincinnati last week. The defense has certainly impressed me. Jack Kelly has really been a player that's caught my eye the few times I've turned BYU on, and his ability to get after the quarterback and make plays, in the second level of defense as well. I think he's really been impressive. He's a guy that'll be on my All Big 12 ballot here in a matter of weeks, and I think certainly the safeties have been good too. They've got 3 or 4 guys back there that can make things happen in coverage, and if UCF's not careful, they can certainly find the football.
So, what kind of performance are we going to see out of UCF? You say, defense has been doing good, but your guys are terrible on the road. You had a pretty good win last week against Oklahoma State. Guys played well. Tatum Jackson had a nice day. Of course, a couple interceptions, but for the most part, they played pretty good in squeaking out that win. But what kind of performance do you see for your team at the end of the season here against and fighting for bowl eligibility as well on Saturday at LaVell Edwards Stadium?
I see a hungry performance. I think there's a lot of incentive for them. Obviously, they're going to want to go to a bowl game, especially the seniors that are not going to be able to have any eligibility beyond this year. This could be their last football game, right? So they want to go out there and get back to a bowl game for the program. Scott Frost has financial incentive to win this game. I know it's something he's not really going to talk about publicly, but in his contract, if they win and they get to any bowl game in 2025, he gets an additional year, a 6th year at over $5 million in salary. So there's motivation. Yeah, there's motivation for him to win the game certainly too. It was a bit of an eye popper when we saw the terms of the contract released back in the summer. I think this is certainly a team that wants to prove that it can be not only competitive on the road, but go out there and maybe pull off an upset. Last year, a good example for this would be the Iowa State game. I think that would be a great template for them if they can pull off a similar performance to that. They went on the road last October to Iowa State, and they were ranked in the top 10 at the time. They were expected to win that game by 2 or 3 scores, and UCF led for most of the game, including into the final minute. They gave up a late touchdown. Jakari Brown ran for well over 100 yards that day. So if they can give you something like that, I think that would be something that, win or lose, UCF fans would be really positive about if they can go out there and have a quality end-of-season performance as opposed to seeing kind of the same things we've seen typically. Now, do I expect that against BYU? No, quite frankly, I don't. I think we're going to see that this team, Scott Frost the other day, kind of for the first time all year, said we are what we are. I mean, you're 11 games into the season. You know exactly what kind of team you are right now, and unfortunately for them, it's been undisciplined, it's been self-destructive at times, and it's been inefficient. So I think that, to me, is probably the most likely scenario, is that you're going to get BYU rolling early, and I think it's going to be one of those things where it could be a bit of a snowball effect.
One thing that this UCF team has always been able to do, and obviously it'll take some time for Scott Frost to build his guys up, but he recruits that area in Florida well. How has the recruiting been for him this time around? Obviously, you need a little bit of extra time. And what's kind of his superpower when it comes to bringing in guys who buy into that UCF program?
It's been interesting. He certainly hit big his first time around here. You go back to his first recruiting class, he was able to land two guys in Tristan Hill and Richie Grant, who are off the radar, 2-star recruits who they developed into second-round NFL draft picks on defense. So they were able to find some guys that were overlooked or didn't attract the major recruiting networks at the time, and they were able to do that. Now, they're hoping to do that again this time, but really their class is very small by comparison for 2026. They only have 13 commits, and only 5 of them are from the state of Florida. So they've kind of branched out. It's been tough for them to kind of reestablish some of those relationships, I think, and of course, you have the new age of recruiting, right? Like you have the opportunity to go find more established college football players. If you're spending money, would you rather take a handful of shots in the dark on high school guys? Or would you rather go out there and buy players that you've seen tape of at this level? So I think that's another major question mark that's going to be the long-term vision. Now, that could also be guys coming back home. Dylan Wade, for instance, is an Orlando native. They've been able to find Sincere Edwards, who is an impact player at Pitt as a true freshman, came back, and he's from Apopka. So they have that second chance type of recruiting available to them as well. I think long-term, they got to find a balance. They got to find a balance between foundational pieces that they want to retain long-term and develop from day one, and then also filling the gaps in the depth chart that can provide immediate help at key positions.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game on Saturday. I always, when teams have things on the line, take the Utah game last week at Kansas. They're fighting for bowl eligibility as well, and they came out and had a great performance. And so hopefully there's something the same from UCF, so we can see some good football this weekend. But what is your opinion on the whole CFP kind of roundup and how we have potentially 2 or 3 Big 12 teams, and how this whole is shaking out? Like, we still don't know who's in the Big 12 championship till the end of this week, and how UCF can kind of play spoiler on that.
Yeah, I think UCF definitely has the opportunity to play spoiler. Like I said, I think BYU has to win this game, and they have to do so relatively impressively.
Right.
I told Mitch this the other day. Quite frankly, I thought BYU got jobbed last year. The fact that they were undefeated for, 9 or 10 weeks of the season. They lost 2 of their last 3 games, and it was almost forgotten that they beat SMU in September, and that was the last team that made the field as a wild card, right? So, obviously the on-field result didn't matter at the end of the day. It was more like, what did the team look like in late November as opposed to what they looked like in the first couple months of the season. You're kind of seeing that play out again with Miami and Notre Dame this year. So it makes you wonder, with this voting system, do the on-field results even matter, right? Right. And I think that's a huge, huge problem. I think if we're going to have games where you're trying to build all these marquee matchups early in the season, and then later on in the year, they don't matter at all when it comes to the voting, what's the point? What's the incentive for these teams to schedule this way? Just schedule as many easy wins as you can and try to go out there and win your conference. I think it's a bad look. It's a bad precedent to set. And I think the Big 12 has shown year on year in the last couple of seasons here that they can go out there and their top teams can compete at a very high level. I think Texas Tech is a well-deserving top 5 team right now, considering the talent on the roster and what they've done and how they've done it. The fact they've blown out so many teams this season. And I think BYU, you go back and look at some of those wins. East Carolina's a road win that's aging well, certainly every week. And I know that they haven't had the strongest schedule, but Cincinnati on the road at nighttime, I think is a really nice win. I think it's a win that any team in the country would be happy to have as a road win. So I think that they should be very much in this conversation, regardless of the conference they play in. And it may take, a loss or 2 from a team in front of them to slide in, but I would absolutely have them certainly in the discussion here in the final 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch how, I don't know if it's – do you think that when the Big 12 added – UCF, BYU, even the Four Corner schools, Cincinnati, Houston. Did the conference take a big hit when it came to just like the way they looked for other conferences? Because it just seems like, even though the ACC doesn't seem like it's one of the strong ones out there. I mean, you live out east, and so you're able to kind of get that vibe a little bit more because obviously Florida gets talked about a lot as an SEC team. Florida State even gets talked about a lot, and Miami does obviously as both as ACC teams. And so I don't know what the vibe is outside of kind of the world we live in, except for what we see with the College Football Playoff Committee, who just seem like they like to lean toward those other conferences.
Well, you lose the two major brands in the league, right? You lose Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and theoretically it makes the league substantially weaker, and it makes the SEC substantially stronger. Now, Oklahoma's had a very good season. Texas has had their moments. They've lost most of the big games they've had on the schedule this year, but that's the reason I think the perception of the Big 12 is down from a national perspective and maybe from a casual perspective, to be honest, is that the two biggest names in the league defected. And left the league kind of for dead. But I think that you look at some of the teams they've added over the years. Arizona State last year took Texas to overtime, really should have won that game. And you look at what Cam Scadaboo was able to do in the NFL this year. Jordan Tyson might be a top 10 pick this coming year. I mean, there's good
Spencer
football
Fano,
in this league.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, Spencer Fano at Utah, who's going to be a high draft pick. Tataroa McMillan at Arizona was a top 10 pick last year. Right. Travis Hunter won the Heisman. I mean, that's not by accident. There's really good players and really good teams in the Big 12, and I think that the league was undervalued last year, and I didn't expect that it potentially could be again this year. And what's been sort of a down year for the Big 10. I mean, their best teams have been good: Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon to maybe a slightly lesser extent, but I thought if any year that they were going to get two teams pretty easily, it was going to be this one, given how well BYU's played all year and given how much money Texas Tech spent and how much that return on investments paid off.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. We'll all convene at this. Well, Sly won't. He's going to be in Lawrence watching the Utes from the sidelines there, calling that Utah game. I'll be up in the press box, though, and Chris, come over, say hey to all of us over there in the BYU media area on that side, and we'll high five, and you can enjoy the beautiful view from up there. At the very least, it'll be cold, but not where we're at, my guy. It's going to be good food up there, and we're going to have a good time, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I was saying earlier, it's my first time ever going to Utah. I know the stadium views are spectacular. I've seen them from just pictures, so I'm looking forward to that. If anybody listening's got food recommendations or things to do out there in the 48 hours or so that I'll be in Salt Lake and Provo, give me a holler. You know where to find me.
Wait till you scarf down one of those cougar tails.
Okay. that sounds like a winner.
All right, settle down. It's a big giant donut at the stadium, all right? That's all I need to know. But hey,
thank
look,
you guys so much.
It'll be good. All right, Chris, we'll talk to you on Saturday. Have fun, safe travels. There you go. Chris Boyle covers UCF for the Daytona Beach News Journal.